Speaksies.
I was recently at my favorite sports bar. I saw a guy reading a book at the bar, which really wasn't interesting to me. Until someone else walked into the bar with a book and sat directly across from him.
All right, welcome to Origin of Speaksies. My name is Scott. I'm joined by my friend Steve, as always, and he was just telling us a story about two men.
So you've seen this
in a bar.
before, where
Yeah,
you've
one
seen
person
a guy
sitting there.
at the bar with a book, which one of those people I kind of don't like, and at the same time could see my life being slightly different.
I have
and
the
would
same
be doing
reaction.
the same thing.
Yeah.
I kind of want to hate him more because that could be me.
Well, there's part of me that's like, generally to me, it's more so, it's a guy in a bar, but kind of at a table by himself, reading a book, and I'm like, well, there's something depressing about it, but also like I could totally see myself do that.
Doing
Yeah.
that.
Well, let's be honest. I'm not above going to the bar by myself and sitting and looking at my phone. That's probably worse. You think about
well,
it.
maybe that's that guy's attitude. So,
he looks at us. Yeah.
So guy number one was sitting in a way that if you walked into the bar, you would see him. I was sitting behind him, so I got a little insight into him. He had a book from the library, which again, with the guy at the bar reading a book, everything he's doing is intentional. Like, I didn't see what book it was, partially because of that library wrap, cellophane, that flashlight, but I did see a label.
Yeah.
And he was drinking a glass of white wine. And, so again, not too thrilled with this guy, or not impressed with him, even though I could still see myself.
Yeah, but he sounds more like a character in a book than it's somebody, like you can see you, right? So this guy sits at a bar with a library book and a white wine. All right, I'm intrigued. Go on.
So later, as I'm starting to lose interest in him, someone else walks into the bar, sits on the other side of the bar, directly across from him, has a...
Oh, because I'm thinking of, is Glory Days?
Yeah.
Because they have a square bar.
Yeah.
So it's the guy on the other side of the...
so he's facing him. And right in his line, eye line. I mean, it's totally intentional. Has a very obvious Kindle reader.
Okay.
And orders a Budweiser.
What in the world's going on?
And I don't know. And at that point, frankly, it was interesting.
They
for a
didn't
few
know
minutes.
each other. They were just two guys.
Or maybe they
they have some sort of weird
feud.
Yeah,
there was something happening there. That can't be coincidental. All of that happened.
Way.
So I was trying to figure out who I was rooting for in that fight, and then I pretty much lost interest until I came over here tonight.
Well, thank you for telling me about it.
But I was wondering if I had stayed longer, if there was a woman that was going to show up, and what the key factor was. That maybe she had she liked white wine, but had a Kindle reader or something. There was something that they were.
All I have to say is save some ladies for the rest of us, guys. I mean, that's just, they're putting the vibe out hard.
They are.
I do kind of now wish that you had taken the opportunity to go out to your car and get a book, which I'm sure you have, and just take up your spot, maybe on the other side, like diagonal to them each,
Yeah, but that's also one of those situations that, if you're in a public restroom, you think it's funny to tap your foot.
That's a good
and
point.
Then maybe you've sent a signal out. You don't.
That, you know what? You're exactly right. That could be putting out the exact wrong signal. Yeah. I don't know exactly what for, but
and I don't think they did either. But anyway,
because in fairness, tapping somebody's foot when you're in the stall,
it's pretty aggressive. But I think also sitting in the eye line of the other guy reading
that's
a book
aggressive
at the bar,
too.
That's about as aggressive as bar book guys can.
Maybe
get.
People just do that now more than. No, because nobody reads. People aren't going to the bar to read.
The real question is, when am I going to do it? What has to happen? Because it's going to happen now. I think that was one of the reasons it resonated with me. Is at some point in my life, I'm going, you know what?
Yeah.
But I will still be better than, I think the lowest common, or the worst thing I've ever seen in a public performance of showing off was I was at a Starbucks several years ago, and there was a gentleman that was sitting in a place. It was very prominent, so everyone would see him.
Yeah.
He was making a sweater.
What?
And I don't know why.
I've never heard that one.
Yeah, and I didn't want to know why.
Yeah. I mean, people use Starbucks, though, for
this was
anything, but
so now you can go on Twitter and get some instant attention. But this was his cry for help.
that is weird.
Making his own sweater in sight of everyone.
All right. Well, we're going to do tonight. So I guess I'll preface this episode with saying I got kind of, there's going to be some debunking here. So I thought I had a theme with this one, and we'll discuss this.
Mm-hmm.
But as we went along, I realized that these idioms that I'm going to do tonight have a lot of folk etymology embedded into them as well.
So you thought you were coming in with, I'm doing a theme of X.
Right.
But as you did your research, you found out that wasn't the case.
Right. So like a cursory reading of some idioms, and again, it's and you and I have learned this, that the more matter of fact and sort of, well, this is what this means in absolute somebody is, the more it's probably wrong, the more it's probably a folk etymology. And so I should have known better, because this was just like, boom, this is what this means. And I was like, oh, that's a good one. Oh, this is what this means. Oh, that's a good one. Okay, I got 3 here that have like a nautical theme. So that would be the theme. Mm-hmm. As we go through it, we'll see that 1 or 2 of them don't have any connection, and then 1 does, but it's jury's a little bit out on that one. Let's start with over a barrel.
Over a barrel.
I like this one, and it's one that I definitely use, and I feel like maybe I use it more than other people, but is this one that you use?
I don't think I use it as much as it kind of brings up a vision of me of watching cartoons as a kid. I feel like that was one that was kind of in cartoons. You saw a lot of barrels in cartoons.
People going over Niagara Falls in a barrel.
Ended up losing their clothes, walking around in a barrel.
Yes.
In the same way that I'm going to rip a little bit of a joke off John Mulaney, is when I got older, I thought there'd be more barrels and more quicksand.
Oh, yeah.
It turns, there would be 2 of those things would be bigger factors in my life.
Hey, quicksand made a reappearance in Star Wars. I was like, did you see, it's not really quicksand, but I was like, wow, they're taking it back to, Yogi Bear. And
hey, they haven't run out of all their ideas yet. They're doing quicksand. But barrel, so over a barrel, I think of going over the falls in a barrel, but over a barrel means you have someone in a bad position of they've got you, you're at someone else's mercy.
Yeah, exactly.
They have you over a barrel.
Exactly what it means. And I I got this from Grammar Monster, and I just wanted to use this. I found it in a bunch of places, but I wanted to say Grammar Monster.
Say those 2 words.
I did.
Next to each other.
There's a website called Grammar Monster. They say it just as you did, that to have someone over the barrel or over a barrel means to have someone totally at your mercy. For some reason, I've always kind of known what this meant, and I'll use that. He's got him over a barrel, but I've kind of always thought of it in some sort of almost euphemistic way, like almost sexual way. Like
if you're over a barrel, you're at someone's.
You're really at someone's mercy.
Parts of your body are really at someone's mercy.
Yeah, and it's a little, has always felt a little risque to me, but also sort of like, not graphic. And I guess there is a little bit to that. But I also want to go to the Grammarist, because as it comes up a lot on this show, people love a good flogging. People love to talk about it. We talked before in one of these episodes about how the Cat of Nine Tails seems to just come up on almost every origin. So Grammarist says, yes, it means to have someone in a helpless position. And now it admits that the origin is pretty obscure. When I first read this, it was pretty much said as a fact. So like Grammar Monster and a couple of other places I saw just said, it's a nautical term. It derives from the practice of hanging a drowned, usually unconscious person over a barrel to clear their lungs of water. And the fate of a patient, if you want to call him a patient, or the person that's hung over the barrel, was determined solely by the action of those administering the treatment. In other words, he was at their mercy. So again, and it did remind me a little bit of Blowing Smoke.
Right.
But there's some truth to this from what I read, and we'll get into that a little bit, that they really did do this. They'd hang somebody over a barrel.
Or they pull someone out of quicksand.
Well, somebody, look, people probably did pull people out of quicksand. We'll do an episode on that. I don't know if there must have been quicksand for there to be that many Scooby-Doo episodes with quicksand in it. But back to grammar. So they say, it is kind of a slightly obscure origin here. One theory has to do with what we just said, draping the man over a barrel. Whereas all these other places are like, that's what it is. Another theory is that it refers to a common hazing practice in college fraternities in the late 1800s. And then they say, but most probably both of these practices relate to a practice wherein sailors were punished on the high seas by being tied over barrels and flogged. And then they have like this picture of, some poor guy being put over a barrel and flogged while these mustachioed men look on. And it's just like, people like to talk about this a little too much. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
It just gets inserted. I swear, how many of these have we done? We did, cat got your tongue. There was one recently I don't even remember now. And now he's like, well, it relates to the practice of a sailor being tied up and beaten within the inches of his life. It's like, all right, settle down. Yeah. I'm sure it happened, but why are we so obsessed with it? So the first time so another potential theory is in the 1939 movie, The Big Sleep, actually the novel first by Raymond somebody. It sort of seemed to refer to the barrel of a gun because if this is one of my favorite movies. I love this movie. Right. And there's a scene where he's trying to use the same gun and the guy, Philip Marlowe, says like, hey, you use that gun again, you're going to be over a barrel because they can figure you out.
Solid word.
It's good wordplay. It has nothing to do with the barrel of a gun. And in reality, it is wordplay in that. It's a pun. So anyway, it seems to be that there's a little more to this than just the Navy thing. And then, okay, how does hazing come into it? How does this all tie together? I went back to Worldwide Words, as I always do, to sort of, I'm always glad when he has done an entry because he just summarizes it so well. And he talks about the three different ones. He points out that the Oxford English Dictionary, when I say he, I mean Michael Quinion at Worldwide Words, he points out that even the Oxford English Dictionary kind of missed this one. They said the first occurrence was the Raymond Chandler's Big Sleep. And they actually said that was the first occurrence and said it may have to do with the gun barrel. They didn't realize that he was making a pun. And they, I guess, apparently didn't know that there were previous versions which they have now fixed. It's a figurative expression that went way back all the way to the late 1800s. It showed up in the Woodland Daily Democrat, which is a California newspaper in 1896.
Shocking.
Yeah, right. And it says, but listen to this, though. It goes back to what I was saying. It says, quote, to use a vulgar expression, a Republican Congress gleefully assembled in Washington for the express purpose of getting President Cleveland, quote, over a barrel. The humiliating predicament in which the aforesaid Congress now finds itself is ample evidence that Mr. Cleveland has beaten it at its own game. So I think it's interesting that he referred to it as a vulgar expression because that kind of goes back to what I was saying. Because look, having somebody over a barrel to help them get water out, and not drowned, there's nothing vulgar about that. Right. But like having someone's mercy with, frankly, their butt up in the air, could be considered vulgar.
Yeah, and a whip being involved too.
Yeah, exactly. And the whip makes it. First of all, the whip had nothing to do. That's what cracks me up. And again, I'll just say it again. The whip had nothing to do with anything. It was like because it's like you're trying to keep someone from drowning. Why are you going to whip them? Yeah. And then somebody just injected. Well, the Navy was known for whipping the bejesus. It's like, okay, we know. And mustaches were involved.
So this is about as good of a segue as I'll ever get to bring up this motion picture. And one I actually was prompted because apparently it makes an appearance in the new Joker movie.
Oh.
Is a movie called Zorro, the Gay Blade from 1981. So
at what point did you realize that was a movie and not just something that we all got called in school?
I've actually seen this before, and I was one of those ones, as you can imagine by the title, you could see it being canceled and hidden somewhere. So I had to find it actually on YouTube, and it's surprisingly, I don't know, I'm not someone that's easily offended. I would think watching from someone who wants to be offended, it's not very offensive.
Yeah.
Well, let me just tell you maybe about how the movie goes, and
Yeah.
You can decide if it's offensive or not.
Okay.
So George Hamilton plays 2 roles.
I'm already offended.
Yeah. You haven't watched... it's no funny farm, but it's pretty good. So he plays the role of Don Diego de la Vega, who returns home when his father dies, returns to Los Angeles in the 1800s after his father dies, and discovers that his father was Zorro. Mm-hmm. So he takes up the role of Zorro and unfortunately hurts himself. Mm-hmm. But fortunately for him also, his brother Ramon returns from the Navy. He'd been in the British Navy years ago. He's a little bit different, speaks with a British accent.
Yeah, because he was getting whipped all the time.
And also now goes by the name of Bunny Wigglesworth. All
right, hold up. Okay. So quick checkpoint here on being offended. Mm-hmm. First of all, is this some cultural appropriation going on, or does George Hamilton have some sort of like
he's generally
Hispanic descent? No. Okay, so there's strike one.
Yeah.
We have George Hamilton playing Don Diego, El Tostado or whatever.
Well, it gets better. So as he's injured and can't participate as Zorro, his brother Bunny Wigglesworth.
Oh wait, really?
Goes out as Zorro, except he does things a little bit different.
Okay, wait, you didn't let me have my 2 points. So the second point is the guy just came back from the Navy, which we just talked about. This is the perfect time for you to tell this story. Mm-hmm. And now his name is Bunny Wigglesworth.
Yeah, and instead of using a sword, he uses a bullwhip instead.
No way!
Yes way. And again, this sounds like cancel culture all over.
And that's when they start calling him the Gay Blade? Or that's just the name?
No, he calls himself that at one point. But he doesn't like all the black and doesn't like using a sword. So he wears a variety of coordinated colors.
Okay.
And uses a bullwhip as his weapon.
So this is pretty overt. Like this is okay. I didn't know that.
Well, again, it's one of those movies that I think if you actually had a chance to see it, it's pretty entertaining. And in a way, something called Zorro the Gay Blade, you would think would be maybe anti-homosexual.
Well, no,
and it's just kind of played. Pardon the pun, straight the whole time. Well, it is what it is, and people do what they do. At all.
No, but I think the point I'm getting at here is, I feel like before it was culturally accepted to be out and gay and have gay characters in movies, there were subtle things, right, that you look back now and it's kind of like a little wink and a nod, right? This seems to be a little more than a wink and a nod. It's called the Gay Blade.
And Bunny's Wigglesworth.
Right.
It's not subtle in the least.
The Gay Blade part, you can sort of... I never thought that any of this was part of the movie. I just thought it was called Zorro the Gay Blade. That just because he was, he was happy or something. Because the word gay was very... used a lot more than it is now, just to mean happy. Mm. And... oh my gosh.
So I will say, don't knock it till you try it. And George Hamilton actually does a pretty good job of not... He plays 2 twin brothers, plays them very different. Does a pretty good job of acting. And
does he act effeminate when he's Bunny, or does he act totally?
He acts British. He doesn't act effeminate. He's British.
Oh, because you're right. He got turned British. That's what it was.
His dad sent him to the. He says, Father sent me to the Navy to make a man out of me. And by the way, my name is now Bunny Wigglesworth.
My father was a very great leader of the peoples.
Leader of the what?
The peoples, the poor and trodden down peoples. It is my destiny. Except it's going to be another month before I can walk or ride, and by then I'm afraid there's not going to be much of the peoples left to lead.
Yes, well, that's hard cheese, dear boy. I wish I could lend a hand.
That letter was meant for both of us. I cannot be Zorro. But you can!
Me? You wish me to be Zorro? You mean to wear that drab little costume and charge about picking fights with total strangers? What?
It is our destiny.
Yes, it's all very well for you to say, but I don't fight.
Well, surely you fence.
I never learned.
Well, then you should.
Only grouse, I'm afraid.
How do you defend yourself?
Well, actually, I'm not all that bad with a whip.
Well, I'm glad to know more about the Gay Blade. That's awesome. Over a Barrel, I think we've kind of covered, and essentially the wrap up from Michael Quinion is the one last quote was, so remember we said 1896 was the thing where the Democratic newspaper said there was this vulgar term for what Republicans were doing to good old Grover Cleveland. And then in the Frederick Daily News in Maryland, shout out to Frederick, where my sister and her husband live, and my very talented niece.
Awesome.
It said, quote, once inside, he was at the mercy of his captors, and the treatment he received was cruel, bound, hand and foot. He was rolled over a barrel. And that was having to do with a hazing ritual. Reminds me of Kevin Bacon in Animal House. Yes. So same deal. You're sort of just going to take what you're going to take and you're going to like it type of thing. So over a barrel is sort of pseudo Navy. I'm not sure how much of that is real, but it's a good illustration, sort of like the cartoons.
Yeah.
You know what it means, and you know it means you're screwed. Yeah. So
more ways than one.
Yeah. So let's move on to my next one, which is let's do square meal.
Square meal.
So square meal is, for whatever reason, I always think about this one. I never use it. I never say I want to have a square meal, but I've certainly heard it. And I probably hear it more when I hear people complaining about how, like, prisoners, this guy murdered my whole family. Now he's getting 3 square meals in prison, or whatever. Right. It's like, that's kind of, you hear it as like, hey, all the boxes are checked. They're getting a healthy meal.
They're getting the food pyramid on a square plate.
I almost thought about the food pyramid, but I wasn't going to bring it up, but it makes me think of, they picked out the things from the food pyramid, it's like, you remember the commercials when you're a kid of, I guess maybe they still say it now. We talked before about commercials in the 80s, but you'd see like, I don't know, what was like some sugar, like, Honey Crisp or something. And then it'd be like, part of a balanced breakfast. Yeah. It's like, who sits down to breakfast and has a full glass of milk, a full glass of orange juice, some Honey Crisp or honeycombs or something with honey, and then like, some scrambled eggs and bacon.
Yeah, probably someone with diabetes. After that full glass of orange juice and the honey snaps or whatever, it'll get you.
But what was that? But you're right. But do you remember that too? It was like all part of a balanced breakfast. I don't think they say that now, but it was like
they've just given up. It was like, you're not having.
Yeah, they're just like, look at this cartoon.
Eat Hardee's later.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. So square meal and a balanced breakfast kind of. So this is one where I thought, okay, now we're really going to dive into this naval theme. And I want to start by, well, actually, let me ask you, any thoughts on square meal?
I was actually thinking military. It sounds like to me something you're in the Army. You're going to, and maybe that's how I've kind of heard it too. I'm going to go to the Army. I'm going to do this and that, but I'll get 3 square meals a day. Kind of like you'll get your bases covered, provide you the essential stuff that you need.
Yeah, and so I guess that's where I was thinking about it too, with like jail or prison or whatever, which is insane. And military, just meaning that like somebody's going to provide you with the basic nutrients you need in a meal. Mm-hmm. Dictionary.com says a substantial, satisfying, and balanced meal. Mm-hmm. You should have 3 square meals a day. All right, so the first thing I read was from this book I have, which was given to me, and it's really cool because it has a lot of idioms and like a paragraph of what the idioms are about, which I should have known better, but I thought, hey, this guy did his research. I'm not going to name the book or the person, but I was telling you about this earlier, and you referred to him as the anti-popic, and he is the anti-popic because it's like the opposite of getting to the bottom of it. And so I looked online to start looking at my normal resources for where does square meal come from? Because this is really interesting, and I'm wondering if it's this thing that I had heard. And I will tell you what the guy had in the book I did find, but it was from some guy on Quora with absolutely no references at all. So I don't generally do this, but in this case, I'm going to just kind of read what this guy said, because I feel like he really paints a picture. It's just all completely wrong. So here's what a square meal meant according to a guy from Quora. In the days of the olden, he didn't say olden. That would have really given it away. Yeah. In the days of the old wooden sailing ships, food and fresh water was always a problem. Therefore, feeding a hard-working crew would have been very difficult. Meat and fish were dried and salted to be stored in barrels. There would have been few vegetables once the ship had been at sea for any length of time. Fruits were unheard of, except for perhaps apples stored in barrels. Hence the expression, one bad apple. Ooh. would contaminate all within the barrel. It must have been soul-destroying to open up a fresh barrel of apples only to find that they were all bad and to be thrown over the side. Now, let me just pause here. We're going to get to square meal.
Okay.
This guy, whoever this genius is, knows apparently also about how a crew would feel after finding one bad apple. So with no fresh vegetables and little fruit, the sailor's diet was seriously deficient in vitamin C. The result was a common disease known as scurvy. So, real quick, another side note. Do you remember, did you get through all of Kimmy Schmidt?
I did not.
Okay. It definitely gets worse after the first 2 seasons, but there is a really hilarious episode where it's actually kind of a recurring theme, I think in season 3, that Titus gets scurvy because he goes to the dollar store to try to find fruit. It's pretty funny. So scurvy. All right, back to some guy on Quora. So to overcome this, Royal Navy ship crews were given a daily rotation of lime juice, and even in my days in the Navy, this ration is still made available when certain arduous conditions prevailed. This was noticed by the Americans before the War of Independence, and hence the English are still referred to as limeys to this day. I don't believe any of this. Could be true, but he goes on. Larger ships would take to sea with live animals to be butchered and eaten at later date as the journey's length was dependent on the wind and weather. It would have been extremely difficult to plan domestic arrangements with any certainty. In bad weather, with the ship being tossed like a cork on the waves, the wood-burning stove was a dangerous device, which if it got out of hand would consume the wooden ship. We're getting there.
Yeah.
In extreme conditions, hot food was difficult to provide, and yet most foods would require cooking to kill the bacteria and make them edible. I mean, you got a lot of lime juice. Should be fine, but the ship's carpenter would make plates for the crew. Here we go. And the easiest way to make a plate was to cut a square section piece of wood. Square-shaped plates could be stowed away easily, and wooden ones would not break, irrespective of how violent the ship's movement might become. There was no sort of turning machine to make round plates, and that would have been seen as an unnecessary expense. So, real quick, we've got ships on the sea here, but there's no turning machine, quote unquote.
I felt like we went on a very long journey to hear a term that doesn't make sense called a turning machine. I think this is kind of in the doth protest too much, doth give too much backstory.
And that's why I wanted to read the whole thing. So, if you will, one more sentence. Okay. So, when the sea state allowed and there was sufficient food available, every effort would have been made to provide the crew with a hot, edible meal. So,
well, I suppose.
Want to make sure it's edible.
Yeah.
This would have been collected from the galley. Thanks, guy. And eaten with relish on the mess deck table, utilizing the square section plate. Therefore, if you achieved, quote, 3 meals a day, unquote, you were really doing well. An expression still used today in everyday English. Oh, and another variation on the naval story has it that the plates would be set on wooden squares upon the galley to keep. So this is where it kills me. And when he says they get nailed down. This guy just told a story where he dropped some serious knowledge in a very ornate way. And then at the very end, he's like kind of undercuts the whole thing. It's like, It was made this way. There was no, and by the way, it was also probably because they were put on wooden squares in the galley and they were nailed down. No, you already said it was because the easiest way to make a plate was to, what did he say? Cut a square section of wood because there's no turning machines on a boat.
Turning machines.
So anyway, and honestly, not since the one guy claimed to have come up with cool beans have I been more amused by a random guy on the internet telling a story. You remember that one? The guy said, like, the guy dropped into the message boards to say, "All right, everybody, cool beans came from me."
Sounds like that's the anti-Popic.
Yeah.
It'll work again.
Could be. It might be the same guy. It could be the same guy. He's trying to make something out of nothing. So I found some other stuff online that essentially, it has nothing to do with the Navy, but say that in England back in the 1500s to the 1700s, they used square trenchers, which were like these square plates that had, little carved out sections where you could put your different things, different types of food. So that doesn't seem to have anything to do with it either. This is, as Michael Quinion points out, has all the ingredients for folk etymology. So just like the rule of thumb one that we did, it kind of has all the hallmarks of what makes good folk etymology. As Michael Quinion says, he kind of speaks to some of these things that I talked about: sailors eating off of wooden boards, dinner plates. The other one was in the former times in the U.S. military, you were required to sit formally at meals, bolt upright with arms at right angles, so forming a square shape. So a meal in the mess was always a square meal. Now, I can attest that is true because my dad was in the Air Force and he would do demonstrations and show me how they had to eat. I mean, they had to sit in the mess hall up at a 90-degree angle, and they could not bend over to over the plate. You know, they had to sit and they had to eat like this. And that's the closest thing to an actual origin for this, because really all it means, having a square meal, means it goes back to the term of something being square, like fair and square. Right. An honest, square meal.
Just not cutting corners.
And to go back to the previous episode with rule of thumb, once again, it's in contrast to the rule of thumb, right? So rule of thumb is you're just sort of estimating. When something is square, when you're on the square, you're on the level, it means you're actually using right angles and you're measuring precisely. So it's actually the opposite of that. And that's where it comes from is, so it's an American idiom. Having a square meal has nothing to do with England. The early examples do seem to come out of miners' slang. Mark Twain in The Innocents Abroad refers to it as a Californian expression. And the oldest example that he cites is the Mountain Democrat, another one.
Yeah, but not from California?
It is in California, Placerville, California, gold mining town.
You would think we'd have more mining. Now you've said that out loud. We get a lot of Navy stuff. You'd think you'd have more mining expressions. Maybe it's because everyone that worked in the mine died, and their
it could be
expressions really didn't get out.
I think the only other one I can think was, maybe nincompoop. No, it was what was the one we did with nincompoop, the Irish one? Shenanigans. Shenanigans had a little bit to do with like the gold rush mining stuff. But you're right, it never I mean, shoot, we've had 20 times more things come from horses, horse racing. So back to this, the Mountain Democrat of Placerville, California. So two in a row here, Democrats in California. And it says in November of 1856, quote, "We have secured the services of an excellent cook and can promise all who patronize us that they can always get a hearty welcome and a square meal at the Hope and Neptune." And then there's another one where the Morning Oregonian says, "If you want a good square meal and a clean bed to sleep in, give Mr. Lee a call." It shows up a couple more places here, but essentially what they're trying to get across is, hey, you're getting a square meal, so you're not getting screwed on this. You're not going to show up and there's a vending machine with Funyuns in it or whatever. Yeah. You're going to get a honest square meal. Yeah. And it's as simple as that.
I don't know why you took a shot at Funyuns there, but
I don't like Funyuns.
Yeah, I don't either. I just felt protective.
Oh, okay. No, yeah. I was trying to think of what I wouldn't want to see in a hotel.
Now, I wouldn't want to see that in a car that if you and I are going to be driving together for a while. But I think Funyuns could be kind of a 7-Eleven, nobody's looking.
I guess.
Sort of thing.
I mean, to me, it's like I'm going combos way before then. I'm going Bugles if I have to before Funyuns. Funyuns are so disappointing. They're like...
It's got the word fun in it. Maybe they're setting too high
a good
standard.
Point. That's a good point. Logan likes Funyuns. He had them once. It's like kind of into them. I was not mad. I was disappointed.
Yeah.
All right. So the last one, which is in my not so nautical themed episode, is shake a leg. Do you know what it means, Stephen?
I think that I don't use it, but I tell people to hurry up all the time. I think that's what shake a leg means. Hurry up, shake a leg, get going. I probably use other terms for that. So the general idea I'll use, but I don't think I actually use that one that much. It seems weird to me.
Yeah, it is. It's one that, okay, so sometimes, I don't know if you've noticed when you're doing your research that sometimes you'll get a graphic of when a term is used a lot and kind of when it goes out. Mm-hmm. And this one came in hot and heavy. in the late 19th century, and then by about the early 1950s, pretty much nobody uses it. It's not used that much, but I thought it would be something that would be interesting because you do hear it. I mean, it's something maybe from old movies you might hear.
Right.
Hey, shake a leg. I would never say it. Just saying right there felt really weird. But now I want to know what in the world it means and where did it come from. According to dictionary.com, it means to make a start, to rouse oneself. And that's going to come up here because that has something to do with the origin. You said hurry. I always thought of it as hurry. I never thought of it as rouse oneself, which, rouse oneself from slumber or sleep.
Or after, you've been spending all night reading stories about guys getting whipped on top of barrels.
Exactly. Or if you've been, reading a library book at the bar. Yeah. But it specifically denotes getting up from sleep. And it does remind me of, maybe I should start using this with my kids getting them up in the morning. So my sister or my brother-in-law who has a 1-year-old asked me, because he said, I did the question you always ask, hey, how's the sleep going?
Yeah.
And he said, good. She sleeps pretty well. I mean, she goes, she gets up, probably the latest she'll ever sleep is 6:15. And he goes, that stops once they get older, right? A little older. And I honestly just said to him, I was like, he goes, when does that stop? I said, really? I never. I said, maybe when they're a teenager. I said, because my experience is that kids get up when you don't want them to get up. When you need them to get up, they don't want to get up. So if it's a school day, it's hard. But any other day, if it's the weekend, if you want to sleep past 8:00, they're going to be up doing something loudly.
Right.
But getting them up from school, I don't know. Do you have a daughter? Is she?
I've been
get
very
up right
fortunate
away,
that she since about the age of 2 has slept like a teenage boy.
Oh wow!
And just doesn't get up any days. So she's
okay.
It's impressive.
I'm jealous of that. Really, I'm surprised. She's energetic when I would.
She is.
Maybe because she's getting so much sleep.
She's a night owl, but then it catches up with her. So. But I do believe I'm the exception to the rule.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And so with my kids, one thing that I do in the morning when I'm going to wake them up is, I use different tactics. I try to freak them out a little bit, we're going to be late or. Right. Whatever, turn on, open up the windows, get some light going. But one thing I'll say is hey, I got to go. I want to hear your feet on the ground. I want to hear that because I'll go downstairs to go make breakfast or do whatever I'm doing. Yep. I need to hear your feet. Yep. And so this is somewhat similar. And it actually does seem like it has a tie to a nautical deal. But before I get to that one, let's go to Grammarist and I gotta say, we extol the virtues of worldwide words and phrases.org.uk. I gotta say, Grammarist, not the best. I feel like Grammarist might be one of those. I don't know who's there doing research or what. It just seems like maybe they're just pulling stuff from the web and slapping it on there. Yeah. Also, today I found out. You ever see that one? And I am talking a little bit of trash, but they don't. Yeah, I don't believe what I get from them. So Grammarist says the first use of shake a leg is found in New York Magazine in 1904. It does admit the origins of the phrase shake a leg is murky. It says it may come from the American Civil War, where after a battle, stretcher bearers would violently jostle a leg or arm to see if they could elicit a response from a victim, and thereby, determine if they're alive or dead. I mean, no. I'm going to
have to say. Yeah. And they didn't do the research we did, which is just to go over to World Wide Words or phrases.uk.
Hey, man, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. Yeah. And we're the beards at the top of the...
And we're
the totem pole.
And we're friends of Popic, too.
We're friends with Popic. So basically what our whole business model here is go online, find the people that we that are reliable, like Barry Popic and Michael Quinion, and phrases.org.uk.
Yeah, and then interject some stuff about getting spanked on a barrel and Zorro the Gablet.
Yeah, and we're the bearded podcasty face of all those guys. Yeah. I'd like to think. I hope they never hear this, but I will still talk trash because I didn't put out. Listen,
Say it.
One thing I will say in our defense is, yes, we do pretty much just find the same 2-3 websites that are legit, but we don't come at you with, we've done 60 at this point. This will probably be, I think, 63, maybe 64. I'm not sure, but I don't know of any that we've gotten totally fooled on or put out something that's wrong. I mean, now, is it because half the time we're coming back to the same guys? Yeah, why not? They did they're actually actual researchers. We're not. So I don't think this grammar thing is right. The second meaning they said has to do with maybe dancing. It just feels like they're grasping at straws. Today I found out says something similar and saying it has to do with dancing or dancers. It says nearly every man in town able to shake a leg has purchased a ticket. Phrases.org.uk essentially says shake a leg. Nobody really knows why we use that meaning to hurry up. I mean, it could be as simple as you have to move your legs to go somewhere, right?
Yeah.
But they tie it to a related one, which is show a leg. So going back to my kids, telling them to get out of bed and let me see their feet on the ground. They say show a leg means to like make an appearance by getting out of bed, or at least showing, or just being willing to poke your leg out. And it means that, hey, you're getting up. That's essentially what it means. It says too that the Royal Navy, most commentators do believe that it comes from the order to give sailors to put a foot from their hammocks and get up. And they talk about this, I guess, practice of in the 19th century, women were allowed board the Royal Navy ships for the first time. And they would allow the women to stay with the sailors, and they were allowed to sleep in. So basically the sailor had to get up and go, swab the deck, get beat, apparently, get whipped, or whatever sailors did in the Royal Navy. I guess they did things other than get, the cat of nine tails. But so they would, the order was, hey, show a leg, because they wanted to see, was it a woman's leg popping out, or was it the sailor? He says that whoever's writing this on phrases.org.uk doesn't believe this one either. But it's the closest thing that most people say it is. He said the use of show a leg as a wake-up call is well documented. John Masefield, who's the poet laureate of Britain from 1930 to 1967, reported a full version of the morning call that they'd have on the Royal Navy as heave in, heave out, heave out, heave out, away, come all you sleepers, hey, show a leg and put a stocking in it. Which, again, I can see that. There's some sort of call, hey, show your leg, show us that you're moving.
Yeah. Get your feet on the ground.
Exactly.
Put your weight on it, maybe.
Ooh, put your weight on it.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
So just to summarize, shake a leg. Shake a leg is sort of an undetermined one. People are saying stuff all over the place. The book I had, same guy said it with full confidence that this had to do with this thing where they try to find the spouse. What this guy did in this book, and I appreciate the book because it has a ton of them and it has them categorized, and I'm going to use it to get inspiration. But it looks like what he did was he found the thing that sounded coolest, which 90% of the time is fake or not fully true,
right?
And put that down. So he used that as shake a leg. That is not true. Show a leg, again, probably doesn't have anything to do with wives being on the sailors' boats, but comes back to this song and comes back to trying to get somebody up in the morning saying, show a leg. So it's close to shake a leg. So there you go. Those are my three, not really nautical themed, idioms, but we got to talk about we got to talk about the gay blade tonight. Yeah.
We got to talk about whips. We got to talk about guys reading books at bars.
Yeah.
We got to talk about George Hamilton, which is always fun. And don't knock. Don't knock till you try it. You need to make me like a George Hamilton playlist, or maybe just all I need to see is the gay blade. Maybe it's Zorro the gay blade, and yes, maybe that's what you need to do. And I guess to conclude, just to say, there's as a quote from Bunny Wigglesworth, there's no shame in being poor, only dressing poorly.
I think he and Rudy Ray Moore would have gotten along.
Yep. This is Steve with Origin of Speaksies. Thank you very much to all the peoples who listened to our show today. We greatly appreciate your support and thank you very much for listening to us. If you'd like to show us more support, one way you can do so is by leaving us a positive review and a 5-star rating on the podcast provider of your choice, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other weird thing that's just been invented that we are not aware of yet. Thank you again for listening to Origin of Speaksies.
Yeah, and we're the bearded podcasty face of all those guys.